actually now I would like to segue into something which was unplanned, right? Because the main goal of this entire conversation was really talking about purpose, success, and failure. But there's something more recent which is quite controversial, and I'm thinking that we should spend a bit more time to unpack some of what has been happening in the media recently. There's a lot of talk about cancel culture. There's a lot of talk about how cancel culture is a thing or is not a thing. There are people who are for it, there are people who are against it, there are people who think that the nomenclature in itself is problematic, you know. I think you are in the media scene, you have been observing these things that have been happening. Do you have any opinion about this idea of cancel culture?
Yeah. So I feel like as society continues to evolve, as social media continues to evolve, we're figuring out the things we can do, we cannot do, we're figuring out social norms, we're figuring out what is useful, what is not useful. And I think one of the things that has been birthed out of social media that has given light is this thing called cancel culture, which is actually honestly not something that's new. We've been practicing cancel culture for years, even before social media existed. You know, whether we want to remove somebody, we think that this person's opinion, this person's behavior, this person's lifestyle is acceptable in society, is somebody that we continue to promote, or especially if they're on a public platform, should they be removed, right? On a smaller scale, you have that as well. You know, for example, you could have a neighbor that is doing things that are not right. For example, you find out that maybe this married man is having an affair and the community feels that it is not right that this married man is having an affair. And in the HDB block, some of the people and neighbors realize, hey, this guy's having an affair, but you can't really charge him by the courts, there's nothing you can do. So they begin to ostracize him, they begin to not talk to him, they begin to ignore him, they begin to gossip, they begin to maybe not invite him to some of their gatherings anymore. And that effectively, to some degree, is a level of cancel culture. And it's something that we have practiced for a long time. But I think when it comes to social media, the damages are way more, because you're not talking about an isolated blog. You are not talking about an isolated location. You are talking about a digital space that has access, that everybody has access to. Everybody is able to take a look, understand, know the person's name. And with that, a person's life, a person's name, a person's reputation is completely destroyed. And I think cancel culture is also birthed from the place of the fact that there are a lot of things that maybe we have let on in society that shouldn't happen, continue to happen. There were things that maybe we felt authorities, bodies, governments, leadership, right, that were supposed to steward something or take a leadership in certain matters better, didn't. And so all of a sudden, when we've been given now the platform to be able to execute some of these decisions, to allow consequences we've felt for a long time to be brought upon people that have run away from these consequences, and also to better shape society in terms of some of the things that we believe or some of the things that we maybe don't approve or agree with, but it's just systemically there that we practice, or the way we speak by language and all these different things, that we begin to change things, challenge things, reform, reshape things, you know? And so that's where kind of cancel culture is at, and where cancel culture prides itself in its ability to make the world a better place, you know? And I think some of its principle and values are good in terms of we want to see change, and we want to be able to see that some of the things that we have allowed for a long time that should not have been allowed, it needs to stop. And we're not saying that the justice system or the people in authority, maybe it's not so much that they abdicate responsibility or leadership, but everyone has a certain level of resolve and a certain level of time, and they just don't have the commitment, resolve, time, or even conviction to deal with some of these things. So then the people who have the platform and the people who are vocal say, let's begin to fight for these things. And so I think, in essence, some of these things are actually not bad. But I think the problem with cancel culture is that it has come to a place where it's reaching an extremity that is devoid of a level of mercy, compassion, grace, and restorative justice. And so when we look at justice, justice is not about let someone receive consequence and punishment and that's it. justice also has an element of restorative justice. How do we help this person get healed, whole, educate this person, and disciple this person? And a lot of cancel culture misses that. We see that someone has made an offense, we see that someone has said something that's wrong, we see that someone, whatever they've done, and we decide, you know what, we should attack them, we should shame them, we should call them out. Now, it may not be our agenda to shame somebody, but when you call them out in a public setting, you effectively shame the individual. And for me, everybody has to live by their fundamentals and beliefs. And for non-Christians, I can understand why they may believe certain things and do certain things in a certain way. But for us as Christians, right, we are able to look in a situation, right, and not see it completely as hopeless. We always can see hope. Not because we have hope in the individual of the person, not because we have hope in the circumstance. We have a hope, and it's a person, and his name is Jesus. And therefore, when we look at circumstances and current affairs and issues and cultural wars and all these different things, we can look at it with a lens of hope, with the lens of the Lord. What would he do? How would he see things? And has it not been clear in the Bible countless of times where people would try to cancel people? People would shame, whether it's the prostitute, whether it's the tax collector, whether it's all these different people. And the Lord was not about calling them out, but calling them in. He always called people in. He always says, come closer, come. Let me tell you that you have sinned, but also what is the way forward. And cancel culture misses that. And when I say misses that, I'm not saying just, okay, after you comment about calling them out, now you comment something gracious. It's not just about what is said and what you write. Is the environment and the circumstance and the context good and healthy for the person to be able to be restored? And often it is not. I have spoken to people that have been cancelled before, and there is heaviness, there is depression, there's even people that want to kill themselves. And I go, how is that restorative? And I've even talked to people that have cancelled other people. And after they find out, hey, I understand that this was not their intention, but still, they say things in a certain way. And I go, have we missed the point? That if this was not the person's intention, then can we offer assistance and justice? And give, okay, then let's help you to understand how to not communicate in a certain way. But talk to them in private. Talk to them personally, right? And if we are saying, well, we want to reshape the narratives. We want to reshape some important things in society that needs to be talked about. Then I go, let's talk about it. Let's do an activism without a human being and soul being at the center of it. You cannot fight for the dignity of women while destroying the dignity of another woman, a single woman. It's contradictory. And I think it's important that we rethink how we can do this. I am not for cancel culture. I think cancel culture is practiced for all these while. But I love society and us knowing that we will keep maturing and evolving. And so I say this, cancel culture has done a lot. There are some good, there are some bad. And let's not remove entire understanding of cancel culture because of some of the bad, because it's done some good. But let's not also say cancel culture is awesome and the best because there is the good, because there are bad to it as well. Let's look at it and go, how do we evolve it? How do we make it even better? How do we bring in a stronger sense of restorative justice? And then for Christians per se, there are many ways in the Bible that the Lord has instructed us on how to deal with conflict. One of the passages in Matthew says this, if your brother offends you, here is what you do. You go to them and you speak to them alone. Alone. You have a conversation with them, you tell them of the offense. Now, if they don't listen, round 2 is you bring in 2 to 3 other people with you, leaders, pastors, friends, and you have a conversation with this person again. Now, if this person doesn't listen, then Third time is to understand and then to redo it, try again, or leave them be. And it's important that we understand there are scriptural references on how to deal with conflict. And so what does it look like in a social media space? If we feel like there's somebody that is maybe not doing the right thing, go to them in private. Direct message them and says, hey, I think you should reconsider some of the things that you're saying. I don't think that you should be doing this. Now, if they don't listen, bring friends, bring leaders, bring influential people, bring pastors, bring maybe government bodies, whoever says, hey, we want to tell that this is not cool, this is not right. And then if they don't listen again, either you walk away or you try again. With the love of God, you pray and you go, how can I continue to help this person? Now, then you go, but Isaac, what about the larger narrative? What if this person, right, the problem is tied to a narrative, for example, it racist, right? Or it vilifies or it dehumanizes somebody or a group of people. Then I say, if that is what you are deeply passionate about, go get into activism. Go find ways to raise awareness for this cause. Find ways to bring topics and issues, start a hashtag, do a movement, volunteer at a non-profit organization, write articles, post a video, talk about it, but let's stop doing it at the expense of one heart, soul person and continue to let him be the stepping platform. Let's not do that. And that's my thought about where I think cancel culture can continue to move towards and can be even better than currently what it is. Yeah.
Right. Well, I mentioned quite a few things. I think one of the points that you raised, which was really impactful to me, is the idea of instead of having a call-out culture, you have a call-in culture where Jesus calls in those who are doing wrong and restores the person rather than bashing and clobbering the person down into shame, right? And I think that is something that we as Christians can model after Jesus. You know, there's so many examples that you mentioned. When you mentioned the prostitute, immediately I imagined in my mind the scene where the Pharisees brought the adulterous woman to Jesus and said, what would you do to her? In the sense, like, by right, according to Jewish practice, an adulterous woman is supposed to be stoned to death, right? And Jesus instead told the Pharisees, those who have not sinned, to effect, should cast the first stone, and that led the Pharisees to one by one walk away. And that reminds me of the idea of, in a sense, cancelling others is a form where it prevents us from seeing the wrong in us and amplifying the wrong in others. And that's something that you remind me when you mentioned about all these examples. Yeah, and indeed, cancel culture prevents us from showing grace to others and also prevents us from seeing the faults in us, right? And we end up viewing ourselves as more virtuous, more righteous than others, when actually, more often than not, we know ourselves better. We know the faults that we have done better, and we know that we are not that great either. Yeah. So what you have shared is really paramount, you know, in our day about cancel culture.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I'll bring this interview to a close, but I'll allow you to have me a minute or two to look into the camera. Which camera should we look at? That one, right? And then if there's one message, one singular message that you could let our audience take away, what would it be in that 1 or 2 minutes?
With regards to what?
Cancel culture then, yeah.
With regards to cancel culture, I think that as Christians, I think that we are not called to behave like the world behaves. I think we have a great book of truth to learn. We've got a great book of truth to decide how we behave, how we do things. And I think it's important that we do not deviate from this truth, that we do not deviate from this book, to really spend time and says, like, Lord, show us your heart. Help us to discern what is of you and what is not. You know, sometimes even in the pursuit of justice, actually, I've also come to realize, and the Bible and in prayer, it will reveal your heart to it, is that sometimes people are actually not really seeking for justice, but there is a level of anger and bitterness and outcry in our hearts that we project on a certain situation. And that is not, I know it's maybe the world might accept it's okay practice, but actually that's not how we should do it and how we should practice. And so I just invite us, when it comes to cancel culture, to really think about how could we do it that would be honoring to God, that would be biblical as well. And if there's anybody that loves justice, it is the Lord. And so let's go to the person who knows justice perfectly and allow ourselves to be humble, to always come before God and says, Lord, help me not miss the point of the platform and the voice that you've given me. Help me not to miss the point, even in social media, or even with this cancel culture thing. Help me not to miss the point and do things in my own way because I've deemed it as permissible and I've deemed it justifiable. But Lord, what is truly, truly your heart? Because at the end of it all, it is really not the applause of men or the friends or the people on social media that says, wow, you spoke up for this thing, well done. At the end of the day, we must meet with the Lord, and the Lord will take a check in our hearts and will inspect our hearts. And our prayer is this, that when we meet with Him, we would really hear these words, well done, good and faithful servant.